Good morning, and you're very welcome to my Monday messages. Um, just making sure that I am live. Yes, I am live. And for those of you who might be joining me live, you're very, very welcome. And obviously, if you're watching on the replay, you're equally welcome. And for those of you who don't know me, maybe popping in for the first time, my name's Rebecca. I'm a holistic health coach and homeopath, and I use those skills to help support as many of you as possible to be able to live your lives as fully as you'd like to, on your own terms, and to be as healthy as you can, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. So my Monday messages are really part of my commitment to that, where I just pop in and just share a point of view, a simple practice, a thought, maybe a focus for the coming week, to help us all to become more and more conscious of what works for us and what doesn't work for us. So, okay, this morning, homeschooling is in the title of this particular video. It is, however, I'm going to use it as an example because it is topical and because very many of my clients certainly are struggling with homeschooling, and there are lots of different facets involved with that. But to be honest, what the method I'm going to invite you to start practicing this morning, it can be applied to virtually any situation where you're feeling overwhelmed or you're feeling a bit resistant to doing. So perhaps something where you kind of got to do it, but there's a big part of you going, I really don't want to do this. I'm going to talk specifically about teaching and homeschooling today. But yes, you can apply that to any of those situations. So do bear with me, even if you're not actually homeschooling at the moment. Okay, so as I said in my previous videos, I'm working a lot with women who are feeling very overwhelmed at the moment, and that's been triggered by the homeschooling responsibility, that added responsibility that's been given to, let's be honest, mostly mums. And some of it you're experiencing perhaps as the straw that's broken the camel's back, the just one responsibility too much. And the other, there's a great many of you who have shared with me that it's brought up a lot of feelings and emotions around your own schooling experience. So first of all today, I just wanted to actually share a little bit about my own experience with teaching. And I can see somebody's joined me. And I can't quite see who you are. I'm just seeing. Okay. Yeah, Joanna, I think, has joined me. You're very welcome, Joanna. I thought I'd share this morning the teaching experience that I've had over the years. And believe me, many years ago when my own children were young, I did actually consider homeschooling for a nanosecond, and then I completely rejected it. I really admire people who have chosen homeschooling, and that's very different from having it imposed upon you. Same with anything. For me, it was just a complete no. And I told myself lots of stories about why that was the case. I told myself that I just didn't know enough, that I wasn't educated enough, that I hadn't been trained as a teacher, that I didn't have the patience. And anyway, my children wouldn't listen to me, and that somehow the dynamic between us was going to be it was going to be solid in some way. And mostly it was about, having to step into a role, the role of teacher, that I wasn't comfortable with, that I felt wasn't a good fit for me. And that was entirely down to my own experience with schooling. I went to quite an academic school, an academically driven school, and the way that I was taught. Oh, hi, Joanna. And thank you for saying hello. And hello all the way from France. Wow. Okay. Yeah, you're very, very welcome. I hope that spring is coming for you in France. It's certainly on its way here, which is very welcome for us. Yeah, so my experience with school, yeah, very academically driven. I struggled. I was very happy socially, but academically, I really struggled to keep up. And a lot of the time, I actually didn't keep up. I actually pretended that I was. But most of it went completely above my head in certain subjects. And in the ones that I really, really struggled with, I just completely gave up and told myself, well, I can't do that. Can't do that. That's not for me. And then I left school and I got various jobs, and here I am today. And I'm happy to say that it took me a while, but with the work that I did on myself, I began to realise that most of my experience at school was in fact because I couldn't learn in the way that the system was teaching me, the methods of teaching that were being employed. Now Joanna is saying, unfortunately, the French have practically outlawed homeschooling. Those who want are subject to strict rules. Okay, that's interesting. Joanna, I'm talking really this morning about the fact that in Ireland and in the UK, what parents are being asked to do is to implement the national curriculums via online teaching, and support their kids and do a lot of the kind of supporting and teaching supports that would happen in school naturally. So I'm not really talking about homeschooling per se, because that is actually very different, when you choose to do something. And I know certainly in certain parts of the cities, I would guess, in Ireland, but certainly in the UK, parents who have, deliberately, consciously chosen to homeschool actually have some fantastic networks between each other, and they utilise the skills of all the different parents, and the onus is not solely on the single parents. Whereas this situation with our countries being in lockdown, where the children are not attending school, the onus is all on the parents, and just sticking to the schedule sometimes is really proving difficult for a lot of mums who are having to police this, if you like. And obviously going through homework and helping children to do that. A lot of these parents are already working. So they're struggling to do their jobs as well as everything else. So that's kind of the arena I'm talking about, really, rather than homeschooling per se. But it does still apply, what I'm going to be coming on to talk about. But thank you, Joanna, for your information there. That's interesting. I didn't really realise that. So yes, okay. So going back to how I felt. A lot of it was, I now know, and I found that out some years ago, that it was really down to a disconnect. I just don't or didn't learn in the same way that the education system was working. So it worked for some children, it didn't work for others. And the same is true of the mainstream schooling system nowadays. That's my view anyway. And homeschooling or, having your kids at home learning is a very different experience for very many children. It certainly is a different experience for the parents. So how did I get over this? Well, a lot of it was self-development work, but also it was doing what I do now. So a lot of the way that I work with my homeopathic consultations is there is actually a lot of kind of very gentle teaching involved, if you like. There always has been, because you're working with people who are gently opening up and becoming more aware of how they work and what makes them ill and what keeps them well. And so there's a lot of gentle teaching on the practitioner's part in that process. Also in the personal development work that I do, the QTT personal development methods and the coaching and the mentoring, obviously there's a lot more conscious teaching, largely obviously about ourselves. And but in addition to that, for a number of years I've been working mentoring students of homeopathy, and I've found, to cut a long story short, that I absolutely love it. I've got a number of online courses that I teach and live courses when we're allowed to. And I really, really enjoy it. Not only because it's an opportunity for me to actually share some of the things that I've learned, the skills that I know work and have worked for me and for many of the people that I work with, but also because I am learning from my clients and my students. It's always, for me, it's always a two-way process. I'm learning about myself. I'm learning about things like boundaries and, things that trigger me. I'm learning how to grow my skills, how to teach in slightly different ways according to people's needs. So, going back to my own experience, a lot of the time it's about adjusting the pace of what I teach. And this is true of anything. It doesn't have to be academic teaching that we're talking about here. It could be anything. It could be cooking. It could be sewing. It could be a craft of some sort, woodwork, engineering, anything. Sometimes we need to slow down the pace in order for things to land with people. And, there are some, a lot of that was to do with my own experience. For me, many of the subjects that were being taught were just being taught at too fast a rate. And I know that we hear a lot these days about, speed learning and how can we get our kids to learn as fast as possible. And I really don't think that's a constructive way to be. Now, yeah, for adults maybe who can make a conscious choice about that, perhaps there's room for that. But for our children, we need to be aware that they all learn in a different way, and we all do as well, actually. So I'm going to invite you this morning to perhaps think about your new responsibility as teacher, or perhaps ongoing responsibilities of teacher, being a teacher of some description. And that really does, parenting does encompass teaching in some way, always. And I think it's probably more of a focus at the moment because of kids not being at school, and a lot of the onus falling on the parents. So I just want to invite you, if you are resistant to that, if you are thinking, I can't do this, I'm not qualified, or I don't know enough, then perhaps think about it as an opportunity. It's a brilliant opportunity to actually learn more about yourself. It's a brilliant opportunity to learn more perhaps about subjects that you didn't actually get to grips with at school. And you can do that obviously by, swatting up before you have to talk to your kids about it, or perhaps reading around a subject. Maybe if you struggled with history or a certain part of history, perhaps doing a little bit of reading around that in a way that resonates with you will help you to let go of any feelings of failure in that department, or feeling that you don't know about something. Because as an adult, we can rectify that very easily. But sometimes it's just about learning from our children. They're learning stuff that we've perhaps forgotten about, or that isn't really relevant to our everyday lives. And they can tell us things. We can learn from each other. We can also, I think it's a fantastic opportunity to really get to know your children at a very deep level. Now, I'm not suggesting that you don't already know your children, deeply. You know them better than any external teacher. But they do behave, we all behave quite differently outside the home, outside the family environment. And when we go to those parent-teacher meetings often, I know I used to sometimes think, wow, are they actually talking about my child? This is not a child that I see at home. And, that can be positive or it can be negative, either way. So children like us, they will often adopt perhaps a slightly different persona or a different way of being at school. And they certainly all learn in different ways. So if you have the opportunity at the moment to actually go, okay, I'm noticing that, little Mary needs to actually learn at a slower pace, and then she's fine. Or I'm noticing that Johnny needs to touch things, he needs to feel things, he needs to move around a lot, and then he's fine, he's learning. All of those things you only get when you're in close contact with your children, and that you're observing them and noticing how they learn and what they need in order to be as receptive as possible. All children learn. They're just hot-wired to learn and to grow and to evolve, unless they are given some reason to shut that down. And certainly for me, that did happen at school. For a long time when I left, I felt completely closed to any kind of academic learning because it wasn't a pleasant experience for me. And I've noticed the same thing happened to my son, who has now long since left school. But what he did was he spent the first couple of years after leaving kind of putting himself back together again. And now he's learning the way that he does it best. And he's learning at actually quite a fast rate. Really lovely self-education process going on there. Far more effective and far more deep acting than his experience at school. So wouldn't it be lovely if we could actually know that side of our kids better? And so when we go to those parent-teacher meetings, when they do finally return to school, we can actually be more authoritative, if you like, more confident, more knowledgeable about how our children are doing and how they're progressing. And perhaps it will take out some of the anxiety that can be induced by a teacher or a school's viewpoint of a child that isn't able to learn in the way that that school or that teacher gives out information. Often the feedback comes back that, oh, your child has a concentration issue. Now, if we know that actually my child doesn't have a concentration issue because at home they can spend hours at something. So if they're not concentrating at school, is it because they're actually bored? Or is it because there is that disconnect and they just cannot learn in the way that the teacher is using or the school is employing? And that doesn't mean that your child has some kind of disability. That's just not true in many, many cases. It just means so often that it's a pacing problem or that there's some other issue going on. And I actually have a lot of children in my practice who come because they've been told that there's an issue with learning. And we've traced it back to, sometimes it's as simple as an eyesight problem. Sometimes it's a hearing issue because there's, a lot of mucus running around the head, for example, and the head is stopped up and they can't hear properly. Sometimes it's just a pacing problem. It's just too fast. It's too fast for me. I can't keep up. Anyway, I digress. All of those things are things that you can, if you have the opportunity to witness and you have the opportunity to support, that you can really make a difference with your child. I've had, for all the mums that I've had who are feeling overwhelmed and are being triggered into exploring stuff about their own schooling, I've also had feedback from children saying how much they're enjoying learning at school and going through homework with their parents. I had one mum the other day who fed back to me that she was amazed that her son, who had always struggled with Irish, had actually fed back that because of the way she was teaching it to him, the penny had dropped and he actually really understands it now. He gets it. Isn't that wonderful? So I'm just inviting you today to, number one, think about your own school experience and maybe start to make links between your resistance to becoming a teacher and all that means, and also maybe feeling like you failed in certain subjects. Is that true? Perhaps it's the way that you were taught and that you couldn't access that information. So now, is that Martina? Good morning, Martina. You're very welcome. I'm just closing up, so I don't know whether you've seen the rest of it, but I was talking again about inviting mums who are struggling with any kind of teaching or home schooling, or anybody actually, to just examine their own schooling experience and see if that was actually getting in the way of them fully supporting their kids, and to reframe the whole experience and perhaps think of it as an opportunity rather than a burden. Now, I know that's not going to be easy for all of you. And if you are struggling with any of that, even if you start the process off and you think, yeah, actually, it is to do with my own schooling, that is a huge plus. And if you do feel, I can't do this on my own, I need a guide, then that's what I'm here for. So using homeopathy and personal development methods, that we can help with that together. So if you're interested in looking at how I work further, then do click on the link in the post with this video, and do share any struggles that you might be having, anything that you're particularly struggling with. And thanks for the thumbs up. I'd love to hear them. As I said, I gave you some of the feelings that came up for me around my resistance to becoming a teacher, and I'm sure that some of those will resonate with you. So do let me know if that's the case. It just remains for me to wish you a very happy week. Thank you so much for listening. And Martina's saying, this makes total sense, Rebecca. Huge eye-opener for me. Wow, this is totally to do with my schooling. Yeah, Martina, often is. Always comes back to us, doesn't it? Obviously, if we're being triggered in some way, then there is a wound there, basically, that is being poked. So always worth a look at our own stuff, if you like. So I hope that's been useful. Do let me know how you get on, and have a great week and enjoy the spring weather wherever you are. Okay, take care.